There are moments in life when someone's behavior leaves us with a question we're almost afraid to ask. Do they actually hate me? It's a painful thought, one that pokes directly at our need for connection, for safety in our relationships. But we can't afford to sugarcoat it. Some behaviors are not just hurtful, they're corrosive. They carry the weight of something deeper than conflict or miscommunication. They signal hate. Let's talk about one of the clearest signs, emotional withdrawal. I'm not talking about needing space now and then. I mean a pattern of disappearing emotionally, turning away when you're vulnerable, or going silent not to heal, but to punish. That's not just avoidance, it's abandonment in the moment you need presence the most. Let's talk about what it feels like to be in a relationship, any kind, romantic, familial, friendship, where someone has made emotional withdrawal their default setting. This isn't just about someone needing a quiet moment or time to think. We all need that. I'm talking about a pattern, a deliberate choice to turn away rather than turn toward, a repeated refusal to engage emotionally, even when the relationship is clearly gasping for connection. You try to bring something up, they sigh, they look at their phone, they change the subject, you try again, this time they walk away, not in anger, in indifference. And that indifference, it burns more than rage ever could. Withholding emotional presence is not neutral, it's punitive. It sends a message, whether spoken or not: you don't deserve my care, you don't get my energy, you're not worth it. Over time, emotional withdrawal creates a silent erosion. It doesn't explode, it corrodes. You start to question yourself. Am I too much? Am I always the one chasing? Why do I feel lonelier with them than I do when I'm actually alone? And here's the hard truth. Consistent emotional withdrawal isn't just a sign of disconnection, it's often a form of quiet aggression. It's not loud, it's not violent, but it is powerful, because silence can scream and coldness can cut. When someone withdraws emotionally over and over again, they're not just avoiding conflict, they're choosing control. They're making you carry the entire emotional weight of the relationship. They're saying, you're the only one who cares enough to fight, so go ahead, fight alone. That kind of pattern can leave you starving for warmth. It trains you to lower your expectations. It teaches you not to reach out, not to feel, not to hope. It leaves you waiting, always waiting for a version of them that doesn't show up anymore. And the worst part, they may act as if nothing's wrong. They may smile in front of others, be kind to strangers, but with you, they're gone. Present in body, absent in soul. That's not love. That's emotional abandonment. And when it's done consistently, deliberately, and without accountability, it's not just a lack of care, it's a form of contempt, because someone who loves you, even imperfectly, tries. Someone who respects you shows up. Someone who sees you as human doesn't disappear the moment you're most real. So when you notice the silence isn't healing, it's hurting, trust that. When you find yourself begging for emotional crumbs, remember, withdrawal isn't always apathy. Sometimes it's active hatred disguised as distance. And you deserve more than that. There's a kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises, but still breaks something deep inside. It's the pain of being humiliated, especially by someone you thought was on your side. Public shaming isn't always allowed. It doesn't always come with yelling or grand gestures. Sometimes it's subtle, a joke, a sarcastic remark, a well-timed roll of the eyes when you speak, laughter from them, and awkward silence from everyone else. Belittling can wear a friendly mask. I'm just teasing. You're so sensitive. Come on, can't you take a joke? They're saying, I hold power here. I control the narrative. I can make you feel small, and I can get others to laugh while I do it. And that's not miscommunication, that's emotional warfare. Public shaming is about control. It's about asserting dominance in the most cowardly way by wounding someone in a setting where they feel the least safe to speak up. It takes your vulnerability, your story, your truth, your identity, and turns it into ammunition. And often it's not random. It's the story you once trusted them with, the insecurity you confessed the past you opened up about, that suddenly becomes their material. Your bravery becomes their comedy. But let's name what's really happening here. When someone belittles you in public, they are outsourcing their self-worth. They're trying to feel big by making you look small. They're building themselves up at the cost of your dignity. And maybe the crowd laughs, maybe they stay silent, but either way, you walk away carrying something heavier than shame. You carry betrayal. Because the person who should have had your back chose the audience instead. And that's not a joke. That's not teasing. And that's cruelty. And here's what makes it more painful. Sometimes the people who do this will say they love you. They'll say they were just trying to be funny. They'll dismiss your hurt like it's overreaction. But love doesn't humiliate. Love doesn't need to get a laugh by cutting someone open. Respect doesn't come with disclaimers. And real connection never requires self-betrayal. So if you find yourself constantly recovering from these harmless moments, if you find yourself shrinking before social gatherings, anticipating what they might say next, if you leave rooms feeling smaller than you entered them, it's not in your head. You are being hurt, you are being diminished, and it's okay to call it what it is. Because shaming someone publicly isn't a slip of the tongue. It's a pattern of harm. And if it's done intentionally, consistently, and unapologetically, it's not just a lack of kindness. It's a form of hate dressed in sarcasm. You deserve respect, not ridicule. You deserve safety, not shame. And anyone who builds their identity by tearing yours down isn't your friend, your partner, or your ally. There's a very specific kind of heartbreak that comes not from what someone fails to do, but from what they choose to do against you. Sabotage isn't always dramatic. It doesn't always look like someone screaming, "I want to see you fail." Often it's quiet, calculated, deniable. You share a dream and they discourage it, not with concern, but with condescension. You take a brave step forward and they roll their eyes or joke about how that probably won't last. So work hard for something and they're the only one who doesn't say, "I'm proud of you." Deliberate sabotage lives in those subtle moments, the non-support, the forgetting to mention your accomplishments to others, the quiet glee when things go wrong, the shrug when you fall instead of the hand to help you up. And here's the thing, it doesn't start with a big betrayal. It starts with small omissions, tiny undercuts, repeated moments where you feel unsupported, not by strangers, but by someone who should be your biggest cheerleader. Over time, it wears you down. You start second guessing your choices, not because they're wrong, but because someone you trusted keeps planting seeds of doubt. They frame it as just being realistic. They say, "I don't want you to be disappointed." But look closely and you'll see they're not protecting you. They're competing with you, or worse, they're resenting you. Sabotage can also show up in relationships where someone subtly sets you up to fail. Maybe they withhold information you needed. Maybe they distract you before something important. Maybe they support you in public, but privately chip away at your confidence, your timing, your clarity. That's not bad luck. That's intentional. And it's a sign that they don't just struggle to celebrate you, they are actively invested in your failure. Why would someone do that? Because your growth threatens their comfort. Because your courage shines a light on where they're stuck. Because your joy reminds them of what they've lost or never reached. And instead of doing the work to grow with you, they decide to make your world smaller. They clip your wings under the illusion of care. That is not love. That is not tough honesty. That is fear weaponized as control. When someone repeatedly undermines you, discourages your progress, or sabotages your efforts, it's not just about their insecurity, it's about their intent. And intent matters. Someone who wants the best for you might not always understand your path, but they won't try to block it. They might have questions, but they'll ask with curiosity, not contempt. They might challenge you, but not to see you stumble, to help you rise. So when you feel like someone close to you is constantly pulling you back, poking holes in your confidence, or dimming your light, it's not unkind to name that. Because people who love you don't need you to shrink so they can feel safe. They don't trip you and call it an accident. They don't compete with you when they could be cheering for you. Sabotage, especially when it's deliberate, repeated, and denied, is a form of hate disguised as care. And you are allowed to walk away from anyone who finds satisfaction in your struggle. You are not too much. You are not too ambitious. You are not asking for too much by wanting support. You deserve people who clap when you rise, not people who feel taller when you fall. There's a betrayal that doesn't always happen in front of you, but its impact can be felt like a crack through the foundation of your identity. It's when someone takes the story of who you are, the story you lived with them, built with them, shared in trust, and rewrites it. Not with nuance, not with honesty, but with intention, with bitterness, with venom. This isn't just venting after a disagreement. We all need safe places to process conflict. This is different. This is someone stepping out into the world and telling your story in a way that makes you smaller, meaner, or more broken than you really are. It's when they make themselves the hero or the victim and cast you as the villain. It's when they pull apart your worst moment and turn it into your whole identity. When they don't just share the truth, they distort it. Or worse, erase their part in it entirely. They begin to curate a version of you that feels safe for them to carry because it lets them avoid accountability. And in doing so, they feed on the sympathy of others while robbing you of your right to be seen in your full, complex humanity. What's devastating is that you might not even find out at first, but eventually you feel it. The shift in energy from people, the sideways glances, the conversations that stop when you walk into the room. You start to realize they've been telling a story about you without you. And when you try to defend yourself, you risk looking defensive. When you explain your side, you're told you're overreacting. When you ask for truth, you're met with denial. Here's what makes this so painful. You gave this person access to your life. You let them see the behind the scenes, the moments of mess and courage and struggle. And they took those moments and weaponized them, not just to process, but to punish. They rewrote the story so they wouldn't have to face their own reflection in the mirror of what happened. This is not just about hurt feelings. This is reputational harm. This is character assassination wrapped in victimhood. And let's be clear, when someone constantly speaks about you in ways that make others distrust you, dislike you, or distance themselves from you, that's not conflict, that's contempt. That's someone who doesn't just want space from you. They want to rewrite your role in their life so they feel better about how things ended or about who they've become. And the truth is, you don't have to spend your life chasing after those narratives. You don't have to exhaust yourself proving that you're kind, that you're not what they say, that you are more than the one-sided story they tell, because the people who really matter, they'll know. They'll see the gaps. They'll hear the bitterness behind the version being shared, and they'll come close enough to feel the truth in who you are. You are not the version of you that someone tells out of resentment. You are not the character they create to avoid their own healing. You are not the villain in the story they need to feel justified. You're allowed to grieve what they've done to your name. You are allowed to be angry that they rewrote your story without your consent. But you are also allowed to step out of their narrative and stand in your own truth. Because the most powerful thing you can do in the face of character distortion is to keep living a life that contradicts the lie. I'm rooted in integrity, one built on truth, one too full of real courage to be rewritten by anyone else's fear. There are few things more damaging to the human spirit than being treated as though you don't matter. Not screamed at, not insulted directly, but dismissed as if your needs, your pain, your voice, your very being are irrelevant. Dismissiveness doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It's more insidious than that. It trots, it sighs, it glances at the clock while you're trying to explain how something hurt you. It changes the subject when you finally find the courage to speak up. It waves off your feelings with a lazy, "You're overthinking it." Dismissiveness isn't just rude, it's dehumanizing, because what it ultimately says is you don't matter enough to be heard. It reduces your complexity to an inconvenience, your emotional life to noise. And when someone consistently responds to you like your words aren't worth listening to or your needs aren't worth meeting, you start to internalize that silence. You start to shrink, not because you've become smaller, but because someone keeps acting like you never took up space in the first place. You begin to feel like you're walking on emotional eggshells, not out of fear that someone will explode, but out of fear that they'll do nothing, that they'll just look past you like you're invisible. And here's the painful truth. That's not just emotional neglect. That's erasure. Over time, this kind of treatment doesn't just wear you down, it erodes your sense of self. You stop advocating for your needs because they never seem to land. You stop telling your truth because no one ever truly listens. You start believing your pain is somehow too much, too inconvenient, too dramatic, because every time you brought it to the table, someone pushed it right back off. This is how dehumanization works in intimate spaces, not through force, but through indifference. Not through cruelty you can name, but through a repeated refusal to care. It's being met with, "Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" when your heart is breaking. It's being told you're too emotional when all you wanted was to be understood. It's watching someone treat strangers with more grace than they give you because they've stopped seeing you as someone worthy of care. And here's what makes this kind of hurt so hard to explain to others. It doesn't leave obvious scars. Dismissiveness doesn't erupt, it erodes. But the pain is just as real, the damage is just as deep, and the message is just as brutal. You don't deserve to be taken seriously. You are not worth my time, my empathy, or my effort. You don't count. That's not conflict. That's not poor communication. That's dehumanization in its quietest and most corrosive form. And it is not love. Love leans in. Love listens, even when it's hard. Love says, "I may not fully understand what you're feeling, but I care that you're feeling it." Dismissiveness says the opposite. It tells you without words that your inner life is too inconvenient to consider. And when someone keeps sending that message over and over again, they are not trying to build a relationship. They are trying to control one by making you smaller, by making you silent. But let's be clear, you are not too much. You are not a burden. You are not unworthy of empathy just because someone else refuses to offer it. Your voice matters even when it's ignored. Your needs matter even when they're dismissed, and your humanity is never up for negotiation. You deserve presence. You deserve to be met with openness, not indifference. And you are allowed to walk away from anyone who only sees your feelings as a nuisance instead of a window into your soul. There is a line that, when crossed, tells you everything you need to know about someone's heart. It's not when they hurt you. We are all imperfect and sometimes cause pain. It's when they enjoy it, when they take pleasure not in healing the wound, but in watching it deepen. This is one of the hardest truths to face in a relationship, that someone who once claimed to care for you might now be entertained by your struggle. You see it in their smirk when you're vulnerable. You hear it in their tone when they bring up your most tender moments with just a little too much satisfaction. You feel it when you cry, and instead of compassion, they lean back almost amused, like your pain is a show and they've got front row seats. It's not just cruelty. It's emotional sadism, the quiet kind, the socially acceptable kind, the kind that hides behind passive-aggressive jokes or tough love masks. They know will hurt. They know what will land like a punch. And still, they go there, not in the heat of a moment, not in a flash of defensiveness, but intentionally, calmly, repeatedly. Why? Because deep down, your pain gives them something. It gives them a sense of power. It reassures them that they still have access to your emotional core, that they can wound you and you'll still stay, that they can break something in you and still be trusted with the pieces. And sometimes it's even worse than that. Sometimes they resent your strength, your hope, your healing. So when they see you falter, when life humbles you, when you finally collapse under the weight of it all, a part of them feels relieved. They won't say it out loud, of course. They'll say all the right things, but if you look closely, you'll notice something chilling. They're calmer when you're in pain than when you're happy. They're more attentive when you're struggling than when you're thriving, because your thriving threatens them. But your pain reassures them that they are still in control. That's not just a red flag, that's an emergency flare. Because someone who takes pleasure in your pain has already decided to stop seeing you as human. They've stopped being invested in your growth. They become more interested in your suffering than your healing. And it might take time to name it, because when you love someone, or once did, it's hard to imagine they could enjoy your hurt. You'll try to rationalize it. You'll tell yourself they're just stressed or that you're imagining things. But trust your body, trust the tightening in your chest, the hollowness after each interaction, the way you start to dim your light so you won't provoke their quiet cruelty. No one should ever feel like they have to hide their joy to stay safe. No one should feel like they have to manage someone else's envy or be small so someone else can feel secure. Love does not seek to wound. Love does not keep score of your pain. Love does not feel better when you feel worse. Someone finds satisfaction in your sadness or superiority in your suffering. They don't just dislike you. They devalue you. They dehumanize you. And they may hate you more than they admit, even to themselves. Let that truth be your clarity, not your shame, because you are not here to be anyone's emotional punching bag. You are not here to suffer for someone else's sense of control. And you are not here to provide emotional entertainment for someone who's too cowardly to face their own brokenness. You are here to heal, to grow, to rise. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, not in anger, but in deep self-respect. Because anyone who takes pleasure in your pain has already told you who they are. If a person does these things, if they consistently withdraw emotionally, publicly shame you, sabotage your growth, rewrite your story to others, dismiss your very humanity, or find pleasure in your pain, it's not just conflict. It's not miscommunication. It's not a rough patch. It's hate dressed up as indifference. It's contempt hiding behind silence. It's cruelty passed off as just being honest. And sometimes the hardest truth to accept is this: some people don't care if they break you so long as they feel whole. But here's what matters more than all of that. You still get to choose who you become. You don't need their permission to reclaim your voice. You don't need their kindness to know you deserve it. You don't need their validation to trust your own pain. Let their behavior be a mirror, not of your worth, but of theirs. Let it reflect back to you all the places where you deserve better, all the moments where you stayed too long trying to earn what should have been freely given, all the lessons you learned not because you were weak, but because you were willing to hope. That's not shameful. That's brave. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to stop explaining. You are allowed to choose peace over proximity, healing over history, and wholeness over familiar harm. Because someone who hates you quietly, repeatedly, methodically, will never love you in the way you were built to be loved. And deep down, you already know this. So breathe, grieve, rise, and never again apologize for outgrowing the people who were rooting for your fall.